Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And today we're talking about Beethoven's Violin Concerto again, because as I pointed out, we need to cover the greatest recordings ever for standard repertoire works more than once, because there are many, many, many greatest recordings ever. And we've already discussed Heifetz, I think, in this series, which was just, in the ears of many. Certainly the outstanding exponent of the work. Well, if you were a Heifetz fan, not everybody was. And for those who weren't, there was this one, or there became this one, Giulini and Perlman. Now, I've talked about this disc a couple times too, but there's a reason. There's a reason. Certain performances have become so ensconced in everybody's perception of the great recordings that they occupy, more than one niche. Frankly, this was the reference recording, I think, for the Beethoven Violin Concerto, but for sure, it deserves to remain one of the greatest recordings ever, whether you agree with it being a reference or not, because the fact of the matter is it's amazing, and it achieved a lot of things. First of all, Giulini was never one who spent a lot of time doing concerto work, and he wasn't somebody who made a lot of records, and he didn't have a very wide recorded repertoire, so getting him into the studio was a big deal. He was also regarded as a spiritual, soulful, anti-virtuoso kind of conductor, whereas Perlman was regarded as a flashy, romantic, virtuoso, violin-y type guy. Right? I mean, someone who was more attuned to doing Wieniawski, for example, than Beethoven. So when he made this, it was a big deal, a BD. It really was, because you had what people thought would be a union of opposites. But the truth of the matter was that Perlman has always been a thoughtful artist, a smart artist. And so when he made this recording with Giulini, people thought it would be a union of opposites. It wasn't really. It was a very sincere, soulful, beautiful, thoughtful, intelligent recording of the work, played with scrupulous attention to detail by Giulini and extraordinary virtuosity by Perlman in ways that mattered. That is, playing softly, playing octaves in tune, keeping things, the long singing line, because Perlman had a gorgeous tone and he always had a nice long singing line. Let's not kid ourselves. It was hailed as a major milestone in the history of violin recordings, and so it remains. And I will say something else about it, which is really very interesting. This work is one of those pieces that really challenges the authentic performance people, because there's never been a successful performance of it on period instruments. I mean, there have been some attempts, with modern violinists playing with period orchestras and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, no period instrument specialists, except maybe Vera Beth's and maybe there's one or two others, have attempted it. None of them have attempted it with complete success. None of them have challenged the great recordings of the great violinists. And that says something about Beethoven, doesn't it? That to do everything the way it may have been done back in the day, or with, the dedicatee Clement, played it upside down and sideways or something, as part of a show-stopping, carnival act. The truth of the matter is that Beethoven's music occupies a forward-looking sphere. The Beethoven Violin Concerto really didn't catch on until Joachim picked it up in the latter half of the 19th century. It wasn't considered to be a virtuoso work. And remember, in the 19th century particularly, violin virtuosi wrote their own music. They didn't play other people's music particularly. I mean, it was only Brahms who wrote his concerto for Joachim. There were violinists who were looking for great works by the greatest composers. That happened much, much later. And it wasn't until that happened that Beethoven's concerto really took its place in the repertoire of great violin concertos. And so to have this kind of a performance of Beethoven's Violin Concerto, that is a romantic performance, a soulful performance, one which always puts the emphasis, you would think, not on making it sound like something of its time, but making it sound what it is, what Beethoven conceived. In a way, it's a work out of time. And this is a glorious performance and a wonderful realization of it and proof of that fact, really. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. And if you haven't heard this yet, or you haven't seen one of my zillion videos where I mention it, it's unquestionably one of the greatest recordings ever. Take care.